It's playoff time in the NBA, and you know we always do it big on H2DG, but unfortunately, this year I don't have the traditional playoff preview that you've come to know and love. Of course, you know, every playoffs, I like to bring my brother Devon and good friend Johnny onto the show to share our thoughts on the 12 teams that avoided the play-in and solidified actual playoff spots. Like, y'all got the team, y'all got the shooters. Let's make this happen because Giannis, I don't think you want to go home for the third straight year, kneeling at the side of your bed, praying and hoping for a finals appearance, kind of like this. Girl, give me a chance, 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 give me a chance. I don't know
Okay,
what
Des.
You're in rare form today,
Giannis,
Des.
all I gotta say, brother, this is your year. You better do it, boy. You better do it. You better do it.
Hey, this podcast live. Y'all better be ready for this.
I know.
You know, we give challenges to each team. We assign hip hop theme songs to inspire their playoff run. It's always a bunch of fun. But unfortunately, this year, my guy Devon wasn't feeling too well. And due to all of our schedules and conflicts and things of that nature, you know, we were unable to record our episode in a timely manner for this year's playoffs. As you can imagine, I was absolutely excited for Devon and Johnny to be back for our fourth year doing this, but also for them to make their YouTube debuts so you can actually see us interact and not just be limited to the audio version. But the good news is, you know, I definitely plan on bringing them back on the show at some point during the NBA playoffs so we can have some kind of playoff, you know, exciting show for you this year. But in the meantime, today, I still wanted to give you some kind of playoff centered show. So I figured I would share three matchups slash teams scenarios that I really got my eyes on for the 2024 playoffs. And so, you know, I know it ain't our usual playoff episode that like I said, you've come to know and love, but I still got some heat for you today. So, you know, I appreciate it if you just roll with your boy Solo on this one, and you know, we can get into some of the playoff action before everything starts this weekend. But of course, you know, hey, as always, I'm going to try to make it the best show possible and give you just something awesome for to that it's going to represent the most important time of the NBA season, H2DG style. All right, so let's get into it. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast. It's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip hop, you've come to the right place. Welcome to another episode of Hip to the Games. If you are a loyal listener and have embraced the fact that you are hip to the games, welcome back. Always appreciate you coming back to the show. And if this happens to be your first time listening to Hip to the Games, welcome. I'm happy to have you here for the blending of these two awesome things that we love. There's no better time to join the fun here on H2DG. Additionally, I want to give a quick shout out if you showed love to my last episode as I broke down Eminem's The Way I Am. It was awesome to see the thoughts and the encouragement and you know all the love that came my way. Always leaves my heart filled with gratitude and just motivated to keep this thing going. So much love to you if that was you. And before we get into today's episode, of course, you already know I got to get my shout outs out the way. The first one always going to the creative director, Jesus Christ, for another H2DG episode and allowing me to just pour into this awesome idea that he's given me in front of this microphone, you know, and pursue those dreams that he's placed in my heart. And then the second one always goes to my 19 Media Group family, as it's always a privilege to represent the home team, the blue and white. You know, we have a great network of independent podcasters, talented, passionate, hardworking independent podcasters with shows around sports, music, culture. So I'm sure you can always find a teammate of mine to support no matter how you tap in. Be sure to follow us at 19M Group on Twitter, 19 Media Group on Instagram, 19 Media Group YouTube channel. You'll find everything going on with the network on those platforms. Like I said, it's really awesome to be a part of this group and just keep that, keep doing our thing, man. Keep doing our thing. We, like I said, we have a variety of shows around sports, music, culture, and whether it's through likes, comments, listens, ratings, reviews, getting merch, reposts, any kind of support is appreciated. And mind you that the link to my merch is going to always be in the show notes, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever platform you're on. Look in the show notes, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see it always says represent the H2DG lifestyle. That's where you can find the merch if you feel led to support in that way, as I would sincerely appreciate that. And that's how, just like every episode, I'd like to, give you the opportunity to show love to the podcast, if that's how you want to support. So you can always find that in the show notes. But no matter how you support, whether that's through the merch, listens, comments, like I said, I just see it all. I appreciate it all so much. And it all means a lot to me. So but without all that out the way, we can really get into today's playoff episode. All right. A lot of big things happening in the playoffs. And as I've done recently, once again, this episode is going to be organized by the format that pays homage to the classic hip hop song structure. All right. I got three verses. All right. I know the third verse is kind of outdated nowadays, but you know me, old soul, young person, but old soul at heart. We got to stick to three verses. All right. And this is going to represent three topics for the show. The first verse always has to set the tone. The middle one usually brings the climax or rising action. And then you already know your last verse has to be the best for last, the haymaker, if you will. And boy, do I have a banger of a song for you today. Since we always got to start verse one with a bang, I figure that I turn the heat up a little bit. Sometimes you want to start your verse off with a bang, but sometimes that means, coming out of left field a little bit. And, I want to turn the heat up out the gate by discussing a sleeper team who I believe that if they stay healthy, around the time of this recording, it's still kind of iffy, but, leading up to the playoffs, if this team is still healthy, I believe that they can pose a serious threat in the Western Conference. And you may have heard me talk about this team before, but I got to do it again. That team is the New Orleans Pelicans. We start in verse one off with the New Orleans Pelicans possibly being Western Conference sleepers in this year's playoff race. I mean, man, this team has just seemed to do this almost every year since they formed the trio of CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. They get hot at a certain point of the season, and then, they even show signs of being a team to beat out West. And I think it was like 2 seasons ago, maybe 1 season ago. But I remember genuinely believing in my heart that the Pelicans were going to come out the West. Like, that's how good that they were playing. They were firing on all cylinders. They were like third in the West at the time, and it was like, I think all of a sudden either CJ or Zion, it was probably Zion. One of those guys got injured, and then it just everything kind of fell down for the Pelicans that year. And I was just like, man, and I think other people around the league see it too, right? Like, they're always one of those teams where it's like, man, if they can stay healthy, they can actually be really, really nice. But they just haven't been able to stay healthy, and it kind of holds them back once they get to the most important part of the year. And I think they always lose somebody, right? Every year it's either Zion, Ingram, CJ, right? Like I said, this year it's been Brandon Ingram who missed a lot of the latter part of the season. And then we just don't get to see what could have been with the team, right? And then so that like they never get picked early on to be, serious contenders, because at some point you're just like, this team is probably not going to be healthy. So why even have them in our preseason picks? But I think this year, they've done really good. Like, they had a great month of March. They were 10-4. That's their best stretch of the season. Best month of the season was in March when they went 10-4. But then, like I said, Brandon Ingram got hurt, and that kind of crashed everything a little bit. But thankfully, it's been said that, again, at the time of this recording, he's supposed to be back for that first round of the playoffs. He's supposed to be back, even playing, I think, the last game of the season too. So, like I said, if they can get Brandon Ingram back, this team is going to be scary. Um, it just seems like him being healthy at this point of the year is kind of like a change of fate, if you will, for the New Orleans Pelicans. But in my opinion, my main reason why I believe they can be a Western Conference contenders taken seriously is because I believe they are a matchup nightmare. Like that's what separates them from the other teams in the conference and even just the entire league. Like it's hard to guard a team that has three all-star caliber, players. They all average 20 plus points. They all pretty much are around 5 assists a game this year. Two of those guys in McCollum and Ingram, who are among the best shot creators in the league. Then you got Zion as the athletic, strong inside threat. And then around them, you have shooters and guys like Jordan Hawkins, Trey Murphy, you got defense coming from Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado. You got one of the most consistent players in the league in veteran Jonas Valanciunas. I always liked his game over the years. They got another veteran in Larry Nance Jr., a nice mature guy who makes a lot of plays at the basket, right? He can get you a highlight dunk here and there. But I think he does a lot of things of value that doesn't show in the box score, whether it be hustle plays, effort on defense. Like he can do some things that don't show up in the box score. And then you got even somebody like Dyson Daniels, who is a taller point guard. He can rebound, he can pass, kind of be a Swiss Army knife offensively for them. So like multiple guys contribute on a nightly basis. And I think that's one of the main reasons why, you know, they can be one of the better teams out west. They remind me a lot of the Los Angeles Clippers. I think they kind of mirror the Los Angeles Clippers. Again, the Clippers have had trouble with the Pelicans over the last couple of years because I think they're so similar, right? They have a lot of good depth. They're a matchup nightmare. They have defense, they have shooting, they have guys who can get buckets, they have guys who can score inside. Like they just kind of check all the boxes. But again, like the Clippers, right? This is also a team that struggles with health. And, I think overall, though, on paper, like them and the Clippers, they are big threats to come out the West. However, because they don't show as much consistency, and they haven't been as healthy as a Denver, OKC, Minnesota, they might, of course, they can struggle against those teams. Um, but, when they're hooping, when they are hooping, it gets scary. It gets scary. It gets really dangerous because again, I think a huge part of that is Zion Williamson playing the most games of his career thus far. At the time of this recording, he's at 69 games. He's probably going to reach 70 if they play him the last game of the season. So, like, that's what you wanted from him, right? I think that's what fans wanted to see, so shout out to Zion. I'm happy for him because I always thought the Zion doubt and even hate was just extra. You had people saying, oh, he doesn't want to play. If he did, he'd be out there. And, my thing with injuries in the league is like some people act like these players, even these supreme athletes, right? Obviously, they're most of them are eating the right things and doing all the athletic things, the stretches, the modalities, all these things to get ready to play night in and night out. And then you got fans sitting at home just like, hey, he doesn't want to play or she doesn't want to play. But it's like you have no idea what these athletes are going through. You act like they just wake up, brush their teeth, and then be like, oh, you know what, today's a good day to snap my kneecap, torn patella. Oh, today's a good day to, fall down the steps and be out for the season and just rake in the money. Like people act like these guys do these things on purpose. And I just say all that to say, like, I think there are a few things that make a so-called NBA fan mad than a player who struggles with injuries. If you notice, a lot of NBA fans get angry when it comes to health. Some of them are probably angry because they're stinking parlay or whatever. But others are like they seem to get really triggered by that, and I'm kind of like, why? Like, it's not your body. Like, that's not your situation. If anything, they should be upset, right? Because they keep getting injured. When you look at a guy like Anthony Davis, right, Zion Williamson, guys who've actually been healthy this year, who've struggled with injuries in the past, it just shows you that it's their body. Like they want to play, they can play, they're capable of playing, but their body just has to, fall in line. And this year, both of those guys. Again, I want to shout out Anthony Davis as well. Like guys who are looking like awesome NBA players and they're healthy. Like that's what we want to see, especially at this time of year. Um, And like I said, it's sports, right? Not everybody's going to be LeBron or the OG Iron Man, AC Green, right? Like, so I'm happy that Zion got to have a season like this. And let it be known, man, notice what Zion Williamson had to sacrifice. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's going on, he had to sacrifice a couple extra minutes, right, in favor of being ready for this time of year. He had to sacrifice a couple minutes. He had to sacrifice a couple shot attempts, right? He's not getting the same amount of shots as he did, the year prior and whatnot. He had to sacrifice, an all-star appearance, right? Zion Williamson has shown to already be an all-star caliber player. He's a two-time all-star, but he had to sacrifice that this year, because again, earlier in that season, he was still kind of finding his footing, kind of finding his role with this team, how they wanted him to still be Zion, but also be healthy, kind of work him in the offense. Again, I think he had to sacrifice a little bit of bully ball. I don't think we saw necessarily the dominant Zion that kind of played reckless, if you will. The one who just went crazy, 60 from the field, bully ball, highlight dunks, right? But then he would only last 30 games, right? That to me was the dominant Zion. Because, you got people who are saying, oh, Zion's playing the best basketball of his career. And I think it's from a maturity standpoint. I'm going to get on that a little bit later, but I think it's this year was all about maturity for Zion. Like, okay, if I'm going to really want to be a part of this team the way that I dream of and help us reach our goals of winning and things of that nature, I got to be healthy. I got to do my part. And that might mean I have to sacrifice a little bit. And again, for him to be 23 years old, and still struggling with injuries and stuff like that, it can be hard for a young guy to be willingly be able to sacrifice and say like, man, like I'm not 30, you know what I'm saying? I'm not in my 30s. I'm not a vet. Like I don't want to sacrifice nothing, but I think this has shown how much Zion has grown mentally as a player already in his young career. And I think we're seeing the fruit of that here. I think, like I said, he seemed to play smarter this year. Like I said, a little less bully ball. I've seen a little bit more of the mid-range kind of pull-ups that he has, working those in a little bit more, being a little more unselfish, right? Like again, his rebounds have went down, but his assists have been. I believe he's got a career high in assists with 5. So he just seems to kind of finally kind of mesh with McCollum and Ingram and say like, okay, like we can make this work. Like, because at first, you had the people like, oh, Point Zion is in full effect, right? It looked like Willie Green was certainly trying to get the ball in his hands more. But then obviously the injuries came and things of that nature. And then, Zion, I believe, was a little bit frustrated. He voiced some frustration about, not really having the ball as much and trying to find out how he can still be his regular Zion Williamson self and still, get what he wants, but also get what the team wants. I really think all that fell in line this year, man. And so that's really awesome to see. It's really awesome to see him embrace his role playing with two other awesome players. Like I said, sacrificing the shots, sacrificing the minutes, the rebounds, everything of that nature. More opportunities to share the rock, which can result in more wins for this team, right? This is a team that again is flirting around 50 wins. So like they should definitely be taken seriously. And, I hope people see how much Zion Williamson was able to sacrifice so this team could be healthy in the playoffs, where now he can go crazy, right? Now the part is going to be the parts where, when that game slows down a little bit and they might be in a little dry spell, that's when Willie Green can say, hey, Z, go do what you do, right? Go be that number 1 overall pick we know you could be, right? Like be that guy, So I'm looking forward to how that goes as well. But furthermore, another person I want to shout out, I don't know if you've been paying attention lately, but CJ McCollum has been hooping his tail off lately. I mean, again, a lot of that was because Ingram was out that last part of the season. And they haven't won every game. But man, there has been some games where CJ McCollum has led this team to some wins. And, he's just the definition of a savvy guard. He's got great wiggle as he dribbles. And, obviously when I say wiggle, I mean, you know, that he as he dribbles, he works in like smaller hezzies and toe taps in between dribbles with the goal of throwing off the timing of the defender so he can get his shot off, right? He and Paul George are two of the best in the league I've seen at doing that. But let it be known, and not just for CJ, not just for Zion, but like this is a huge opportunity for guys like Jonas Valanciunas, right? Like guys who may not have been all-stars but have been extremely consistent over the course of their respective careers. Again, a lot like CJ McCollum. Both of these guys have playoff experience. Both of these guys have been to the conference finals. And, I believe that this team has a really good chance, a sleeper chance, but a good chance nonetheless to really get some jewelry if all goes well. Like, I really do think the New Orleans Pelicans can be that good. Especially like I said, once Ingram comes back and they can establish the same rhythm that they had before he went down, that's going to be really dangerous. Much like the Clippers, the Pelicans haven't ever really been fully healthy in the playoffs. So, if they are this year, it can get really interesting out west. I just think as a whole, New Orleans is just a balanced team. It's a hard journey for sure. The saying, the playoffs is a whole different season. Everybody starts at zero again. That Western Conference is going to be an absolute dogfight. The East is cool. They're going to have their moments for sure, but man, that West is crazy right now. I mean, even the play-in teams, got their own strengths. And with the freshness that the first round of the playoffs brings, this is going to be the perfect environment for a team like New Orleans to do something amazing despite being in that bottom half of the playoff seeding. But what do you say? Are the Pelicans indeed a sleeper? Or, can they be a threat in this year's playoffs or not so much? Whether you agree or disagree, be sure to leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, or comment on the socials, at Hip to the Games. You can share your thoughts with me. I'd love to hear or see, read what you think as well. Verse one down already, but we're just getting started here as there is a particular Western Conference matchup that I'm very anxious to watch that I'm going to discuss for verse two. But before that, if you like what you're hearing so far on Hip to the Games and you want to know how you can show some love to support Hip to the Games, here's how you can do that. As a fan of Hip to the Games, not only should you show your love for the podcast, but you gotta express your love for basketball and hip hop. With a wide variety of clothing and accessories, there is always a way to show how much the game of basketball and the game of rap means to you. Let everybody know what it means to be hip to the games by clicking the link in the episode's description to cop some merch and represent the H2DG lifestyle. Welcome back to Hip to the Games, and we're going to get right into verse 2. You already know the climax, the rising action. And verse 2, I just knew off the bat I had to start with this. All right, we're going to stay out west here for this one. Man, something happened in the Western Conference that I just had a feeling was going to happen. I didn't want it to happen, but it did. And if I'm honest, this first round matchup could very well be the most exciting of the entire slate of first round games across the entire NBA. And that series is between the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers. Mavs versus Clippers, the trilogy. The third time they'll face off in the first round in 5 years. 2020 in the bubble where the Clippers won in 6. If you remember that was a tough series for the Clippers because, Luka was doing his thing. He had that game winner. It was like, I think game 4 or something like that. Kristaps Porzingis, I think, was playing really well before he got hurt that series. The Mavs role players like Seth Curry, Dorian Finney-Smith, Tim Hardaway Jr., they were all contributing. And Paul George was going through a rough time mentally, being in the bubble. So it resulted in some extra losses for the Clippers that they probably should have or could have won. Then you fast forward the very next year, 2021, the Clippers found themselves down 0-2 in the series before tying things up, eventually forcing a game 7 that they won at home thanks to it was like a great 3-point shooting night from them in game 7 that really helped them get over the hump that series. But again, Luka went crazy, right? I remember watching those first 2 games and I'm like, Luka might really like do this whole thing single-handedly, like almost like a Allen Iverson-esque, kind of playoff run for the Mavericks. But of course, that didn't happen, right? The Clippers were able to hold up, and I think that's really what happens, right? With Luka sometimes, like in the end, he just couldn't outlast a more talented team by himself. As brilliant as he is, he just can't do it by himself. So the Clippers were able to walk away with the victory that year as well. So now there's this year in a situation where both of these teams have gotten better since those 2 series. Jason Kidd is going to be coaching the Mavs this time. Right before it was Rick Carlisle, but this time it's going to be Jason Kidd. Luka arguably has more fitting role players with guys like Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., even Dante Exum, right? And not to mention an entire wizard with the basketball an all-star and NBA champion Kyrie Irving, one of the best one-on-one players in NBA history. Yeah, right, who's just going to bring a whole different level of extra dominance to that team. But on the flip side, the Clippers, you could say they got better as well. They have it seemed like for the longest time their struggle was having a point guard to control the offense, and now they have two interchangeable point guards, future Hall of Famers, with guys like James Harden and Russell Westbrook, right? James Harden is a guy who is great, is really good at being a floor general out there. Um, and Russell Westbrook does a great job. To me, he's going to do a lot of what we saw Patrick Beverly do in like 2021 or even 2020 as well, like a hustle guy. But obviously Russell Westbrook, like this is Mr. Triple Double, like I said, future Hall of Famer. Like these two guys alone already bring so much to what the Clippers have established over the years. But again, back then they didn't have Norman Powell, right? A guy that always has been a great sixth man for this team. And then even guys like Daniel Tice, Mason Plumlee, who can play behind Ivica Zubac for some minutes. Along with already established guys, right? We've seen them before: Kawhi, PG, Terrence Mann, Amir Coffey. Like this team, again, like I was saying about the Pelicans, they got some guys, and I still didn't mention, PJ Tucker being able to come off the bench, whether it's for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, he can come in and bring great defensive energy. If he can knock down some threes as well in the corner, like that's going to help them. You got Bones Highland, right? A pretty inconsistent scorer, but at the same time, when he gets hot, like it gets a little dangerous, he can kind of shoot you in a game, shoot you out of a game. So, the Clippers obviously are careful with that, but that's a talented kid on the bench right there. Like the Clippers got some talent, and this is going to be an intense series. I think the trilogy is going to be the best one yet. Because let's be real, if you're Luka Doncic, do you really want to lose to the same team for the third time? Think about it. If they lose this series, literally the only time Luka and the Mavs made it out of the first round was when they didn't face the Clippers in the first round. The time they made it to the Western Conference Finals was the year that the Clippers didn't even make they lost in the play-in, so they didn't even make the playoffs. But those other 2 years was when they faced the Clippers and they got booted out. I don't think Luka Doncic wants to deal with that again. You got to think that there's going to be some added fire for Luka Doncic because of this. Like to me, it might even go as far as this dude might not be out there smiling as much as we're used to. Like he might be ready to show Kawhi, PG, Ty Lue, and everybody that like I've had it with you old geezers. Like I'm t- I'm tired of you old heads knocking me out of the playoffs. Like I'm still young. I'm trying to establish myself. Uh, like I'm trying to be, everybody's saying that Luka Doncic can't get out the first round. Everybody's saying, oh, he's a great player, but they'll never be able to form a championship team around him, right? Like you hear that chatter, and I think Luka hears it too. Like, and I think that's why I'm scared for the Clippers, right? As good as they are, as good as they've shown to be, we've seen them at their best. I'm a little scared for them. I'm a little scared because, I do think overall they are a better team over like up and down on paper than the Mavericks. Um, but and again, these are two teams that I pretty much have the same record, but I think overall there's more concerns for the Mavs than the Clippers. Because at the end of the day, they just need to figure out how to contain Luka and Kyrie. Which is a lot easier kind of thought about than actually done, right? I think the main focus for the Clippers is going to have to be like, how do we force other guys to make plays instead? You know, they've had their hot moments too. Not many teams have been able to stop that duo. But I think Dallas has the same issue on the other side, right? Like they might put Derrick Jones on Paul George, maybe PJ Washington on Kawhi. But then, is Kyrie going to guard Harden or is Luka going to guard Harden? And I don't really know if either one of those guys can guard James Harden. Like, don't get me wrong, Kyrie has shown to be when he puts effort on that side, he can be a formidable defender. Luka Doncic has a stronger body. He can kind of wall up sometimes, but at the same time, due to how much they're gonna have to, how much energy they're gonna have to exert offensively, I don't know if they're gonna want to do that on defense. And especially James Harden, he still has a pretty good first step nowadays. So like again, right? This is the options that the Clippers have always wanted to have. Like we don't just want it to be PG and Kawhi. Like the Clippers are trying to knock people down by their depth, and they have a great chance to do that this year. Again, like I think Derrick Jones Jr. has great defensive tendencies. PJ Washington has size. Daniel Gafford's been a really good rim protector this year across Washington and Dallas. But, Kawhi is still a bucket. PG is still a bucket. James Harden has even shown flashes of his prime self, right? Like Norman Powell. There's been plenty of times Norman Powell, I've seen the Clippers might be down 16 after one quarter. All of a sudden, Norman Powell comes in and that lead is cut to like six, right? And he can explode off the bench. Russ can get in rhythm on both ends of the floor. Just his hustle sometimes just brings the Clippers back into the games. Zubac has a size advantage. Like I like the Clippers' versatility for this series. I tend to favor them because of that this year. Um, they're just really, to me, in a good spot. And obviously, this is a team that's going to be fired up as well because they know that this is possibly their last chance at a championship with this group before they start considering other routes. So you see what I mean? Like there's going to be some deeper motivations for both sides, right? This is not a one-sided series. This to me is the epitome of what you want out of a 4-5 seed matchup. Both sides are really, they have history with each other. They have, the Mavs have their stars, Clippers have their stars. They're both pretty well coached. Like this could to even and even what I'm thinking, this could even be one of those conference finals first round series, right? Like this could be one of those where the hardest series for the team that makes it out the West might be that first round series. Of course, I know Denver, Minnesota, OKC, they will all present fantastic challenges for both of these teams if they make it that far. But for example, right, I think of the Warriors in 2022. You could argue that their hardest series was against the Grizzlies in round one, right? That was basically their conference finals because they made generally easy work in that second round versus Denver and then in the actual conference finals versus Dallas. The Clippers could possibly have a similar thing here, right? Where winning a tough series like this out the gate could give them the ultimate boost to get out the West, right? Sometimes you need that in the playoffs, right? If you have a battle tested first round series and you make it out and you come out of that triumphant, your confidence for the rest of the playoffs is like, man, nothing can get worse than that. So like, let's keep our head in the game. Let's stay level headed. If we can get through that, we can get through anybody, right? I think that's the kind of, and even I could say the same for the Mavs, right? If you can get a first round series like that, it's going to give you so much confidence moving forward. And I think that's the implications of this series right now. And another thing I want to point out is that, while they would have done it for sure, had there been a full NBA season in 2020, this is the Clippers' first 50-win season in the Kawhi PG era, right? And again, like what I was saying about Zion, for the most part, Kawhi, PG, all of those guys have been healthy. Again, that's how you win 50 games, establish yourself, and then you go into the playoffs with good momentum because most of everybody was healthy. Y'all got to play with each other. In the past, there were moments there were like huge gaps where the Clippers may have not played without a star or whatever. So, the role players were essentially having to carry a bigger load, right? And then by the time you get to the playoffs and your stars are there, you don't really know what your role is anymore. So I don't think the Clippers have that problem this year. And I think the last time the Clippers had a chance like this to get to the finals was 2021. I think back then, I've said it before, all that fairy tale magic, all that Disney magic seemed to be in the air for the Clippers. Like, it's one of those things I still look back on sometimes and I'm like, I really do believe had everything went right for them. Like obviously Kawhi being healthy, I think the Clippers would have been NBA champions in 2021. And so like you can't help but wonder, will they have any of that magic left for a series like this, right? For this year. Especially with so much talk surrounding like contract extensions, I feel like there's a lot of things up in the air for the Clippers. There's a lot of uh pressure, if you will, on the line for them this year to get things done. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, man. There would be no better way for the Los Angeles Clippers to open up the Intuit Dome next year than to hang a championship banner. If you really want to open up arena, all right, Steve Ballmer, I know you got, what I'm saying? I know you got the wall that's for Clipper fans only. I know you got what, toilets in the seats so you can still watch the game and go to the bathroom or whatever he said. Um, I know there's a lot of money and a lot of technology going into the Intuit Dome. Like it's gonna be one of the probably the biggest arena next year, with the hype and phenomenon and everything like that. But if you really want to open up, if you really want to put the cherry on top of opening a new arena, you hang a banner up there. If you really want to usher in a new era of Clipper basketball with that, and I don't know why it makes me think of this, but with that long John Silver's Clippers logo, if you really want to, if you really want to usher in a new era and make it as dope as possible, you have got to hang a banner in there. That is the best thing you can do. And like I said, a loss would mean a lot. A championship this year could very well solidify the homes that Kawhi, PG, and these guys have established, right? Because again, I think a lost art in this modern NBA is finding a home. A lot of guys just want to leave, right? And I get it. If you're not winning, why stay somewhere where you don't want to be? But again, if I'm Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and I'm in my mid 30s, at this point, like, do I really want to go anywhere? Like, I've been able to play at home. I like it here. My family's here. I wanted to be here. Like, why should I go somewhere else? Again, you got to imagine they're thinking about that. Even guys like Russ, James Harden, right? At some point, you don't want to bounce around from team to team. I don't know, I know there's rumors with Paul George that he could go somewhere like Orlando and be with those guys out there who need shooting and could always, they're already a great defensive team. So, towards the end of his career, Paul George could, hang with those young guys and play defense, shoot some threes and ride off to the sunset. Kawhi Leonard could probably do something similar as well. But, I really do think these guys like being here. They like being in LA. They like being close to home. Like I always say, home cooked meals and stuff like that. So I would personally like to see them stay, but I also understand the like I said, the implications and everything. So, like I said, a win is gonna do a lot, could do a lot for this franchise, but a loss could do a lot for this franchise as well. Like I said, on the flip side of that, what I was saying about the Intuit Dome, you don't want to go into that Intuit Dome with all that dope stuff you got going on, but people aren't coming to your games because you guys are a lottery team, right? You don't want to blow up the team. And then you got all these guys playing. You got this dope arena, but your games aren't the best product. So, again, that's something they're gonna have to think about as well. But keeping it basketball, we've seen how scary this team can get. We've seen the Clippers have that fire middle stretch of the season that they had. We know what they look like when healthy at their best. They were like the best team in basketball. If they can stay healthy, take good shots, I think, play defense, they can do something special. But again, will James Harden give his best every game? Will Kawhi and PG take it up a notch and remain determined to lead their team to victories? Is that something they're going to be willing to do? Because this is the time where the stars shine and the role players bounce off that momentum, right? Like I was saying earlier, too many times the Clippers have kind of had their role players even play better than their stars sometimes. And that can't happen if you want to win a championship. It can be great some games, but you need some of them games where PG and Kawhi say, give me the ball and get out the way, right? You need those games where James Harden is like, yo, I'm giving every effort, right? That's what I want to see from the Clippers. They certainly have the talent, but it's going to be those little things that dictate their success this year, and you got to imagine that they definitely want to change the course of Clipper history in that way, right? They don't want to be known as losers, right? They want to know they want to change the course of Clippers history. But of course, I say that, but the Mavs do as well. They want to change their history as well. Like I said, I know Luka hears the chatter that the Mavs don't do a good job building around him. I know Kyrie hears the chatter that he could only win with LeBron. I know they don't want to get booted by generally the same team for the third time, right? Which is funny to think about because it's like I imagine somewhere Jerry West is in his Clippers office, like, huh, y'all complaining over losing to the same team 3 times. Try 6 times, like me. I lost to Boston 6 times. Like, how do you think I feel? But yeah, jokes aside, I think the Mavs, they want to show that they can establish a perennial contender with Luka as the lead guy. And I think offensively, where they are at is probably the best it's been since Luka was drafted. I know in the past I've stressed this before of how imperative it was that Luka had another go-to guy on his side because again, he was so offensively talented. Just imagine if they had another one where he could play off that person. And again, they got that guy in Kyrie Irving. And again, that's a great option, right? That's not even, I remember back then I was saying like DeMar DeRozan would have been pretty good, but Kyrie Irving is even better, right? And I think the Mavericks can really take advantage of that this year. But I do fear that most of the offense is going to come from those guys, as opposed to the Clippers being able to have multiple guys who can score in double figures. I think a lot of that usage for the Mavs is going to be relied on Luka and Kyrie. And in playoff games where the games can get slower, the Mavs, they don't really have anybody to throw the ball down low to. They might be a little limited offensively if it's just Kyrie and Luka running the show. All of their bigs are athletic, in favor of Luka and Kyrie being able to throw lobs. Like I said, the Mavs, they've had a dope season. Absolutely are a scary threat to the Los Angeles Clippers. They have the talent to win this series, but I do believe the Clippers just check a few more boxes, right? They have so much versatility on that team. They can score in a variety of ways. They have a variety of defenders. Like they can play a couple different styles. They can play. They can start games with inside touches to Zoo, right? They can start games with Kawhi hot. They can start games with PG hot. They can start games with James Harden hot, right? Like there's so many ways Ty Lue can work around that, that I don't think Dallas really has. They don't really have that luxury, in my opinion. Um, but all in all, I think this is going to be an awesome 4 versus 5 seed matchup. I think it'll certainly live up to the hype. The Clippers, they don't want to get booted at all. Let alone so early in the journey. Yet the Mavs, they don't want to lose again, right? I'm sure they wouldn't be thrilled with being out in the first round. So yeah, man, there's a lot of implications in this series. And what a first round series we're in for, man. If you're a fan, you got to love this, right? This is what you love about the NBA. The NBA, where amazing happens. I think amazing things are certainly in store for this series right here in the Western Conference. But I want to know who you got for the Mavs versus Clippers trilogy. All right. Let me know who you got and why. I would love to hear what you think. But we got 2 verses down and 1 more to go as I want to flip it to the Eastern Conference. Because much like how I feel about the Clippers, I got some thoughts about that #1 seed out in East, all right? And I even want to share my theme song for their playoff run with you, all right? I know it ain't the regular playoff preview, but I couldn't leave you hanging and give you just a little taste of what we usually do on that episode. So, yeah, I got a theme song going out East for verse 3. But before we get into that, speaking of the playoffs, there's no better time to find out how you can support your favorite team this year. The 2023-24 NBA season is here, and there's no better time to cop the flyest and authentic merch to rep your squad. If you're looking for the ultimate destination for NBA gear to rep the home team, look no further than the NBA store. With an extensive selection of authentic and high-quality products like jerseys, hats, and accessories, the NBA store has everything you need to express yourself. Word to NWA. And with an online presence, it becomes even easier to shop from anywhere in the world. Don't miss out on the latest trends and experiences. Visit the NBA store today by clicking the affiliate link in this episode's description. Hip to the Games is working in affiliation with the NBA store and will be compensated for your patronage by utilizing the link provided. I sincerely thank you for all your support. All right, welcome back to Hip to the Games, and we are going to get right into verse 3, where we're going to talk about that #1 seed out East. And because I think there is a big run in store for the Boston Celtics. Boston, Boston, Boston. I get to end this playoff discussion with the best for last, right? Best team in the league, the only one who hit the 60 win mark. I think their improvements this season have been clear. I think that their trades for Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday were this part of the season, right? Regular season is great, but they did that for this. Right? I think, we knew that the Celtics struggled offensively like the last couple of playoffs at some point, whether it was decision making, shot making. I think Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla were like, you know what? Let's get a more offensive minded big, even if it means sacrificing Rob Williams, right? Then let's get a more offensively skilled point guard, even if it means sacrificing the heart of our team in Marcus Smart, right? Like, again, that sometimes, again, the NBA is a business, and sometimes it takes those moves to get what you want, right? Again, a prime example of that is what Masai Ujiri did with Toronto, right? He had to sacrifice, as beloved as DeMar DeRozan was to the Toronto community, the Toronto Raptors basketball. He had been to the conference finals, right? As much as he meant to them and as much as he wanted to be there his whole career, Masai had to trade him for Kawhi Leonard, and it got them a championship. I think, I think Brad Stevens had to do a very similar thing by trading Marcus Smart, Rob Williams for Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and it's paying off, right? Um, I think they wanted to be like, okay, let's keep our defensive grit, but let's get deeper offensively, right? Because Drew Holiday can do a little more offensively than Marcus Smart. He's got some post game, he's got some footwork, he can finish around the rim, he can shoot, right? Kristaps Porzingis does a lot more offensively than Rob Williams, but at the same time is still a pretty good shot blocker and inside presence on both ends. That's what I think Joe Mazzulla in particular wanted, right? I think he made it very clear since he's been coach of the Celtics that he values that offensive side a little bit more than the defensive side. And don't get me wrong, right? They're still one of the better defensive teams in the league. And it's not to say that Joe Mazzulla doesn't care about defense, but I think, like I said, with these acquisitions, it's been clear that they know that they don't want any dry spells in the playoffs anymore, right? They don't want a game 7 versus Miami like we just saw, right? They don't want to lose those games the way they did versus the Warriors in 2022, right? They want to make sure that we got your foot on your neck on offense and defense, right? I think there were a lot of times with Boston, they had the foot on the neck on defense, but then they would fall in love with the threes and they'd miss 15 straight and they would just settle, right? Or they'd turn the ball over, right? They were not a great passing team. I know that year they made the finals. They were never really a great playmaking team. But getting a guy like Drew Holiday can kind of alleviate that a little bit. So I'm excited to see how he does in that role. Um, but again, I think as a collective too, right? Like you still keep your defensive grit, you still keep your offense versatility, right? You pair these moves with the impressive season that Derek White's having. Still guys contributing like Al Horford, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, and of course the way Jaylen Brown has continued to establish his impactful end of the dynamic duo that is with he and Jayson Tatum. Like I really do believe this is the Celtics year, right? I never really said it out loud, but I think all year, like deep down, I was just like, if the Celtics play it right, I really do think this can be the year for them. For some reason, I just feel like this is the year they figure it out. I think even all year in particular, I think Jayson Tatum, I think finally he might have something to clap back the haters with, right? A championship, right? It could be anybody, but in my honest opinion, I could very well see these guys overcoming the Nuggets or the Clippers in the NBA Final Series. Don't get me wrong, they could very well lose the series to those same teams. I think both teams, both sides are that good, but for some reason, I just feel like the Boston Celtics can do it this year. I think it will be harder for them to have, like I said, those offensive dry spells that we've seen with the personnel that they have now. And I'm anxious to see specifically how Drew Holiday controls the game to make Tatum and Brown's jobs easier. That is the biggest thing. If I'm looking for anything this playoff series, I'm watching that because so much of the playmaking responsibility had to fall on Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown's shoulders. And then again, like we've seen with the Warriors, I think we've seen it with the Heat, right? I think Jaylen Brown was somebody, he does a great job of like just getting in like doggish mode, right? He's just a dog out there and he'll score. He doesn't mind scoring 20 and a half, right? But at the same time, like it ends up being all him, right? And he may have turnovers. Tatum may have turnovers. And then the other guys don't really fall in line because they're seeing their two dogs having harder, kind of struggling games. So I think I'm excited to see how Drew Holiday is going to help them out with that this year. And then I'm also excited to see how Kristaps Porzingis can alleviate the scoring pressure as well, right? Like, let's not forget this is a guy that can shoot. He can shoot middies, he can shoot threes, he can play inside. Like, he's going to be a great option for them that they can play around, or play through rather. And I can really see the Celtics getting it done this year. I really can, and I hope I'm right because I just want to take you. I want to give a minute to take you through what the Boston Celtics have been through since they won it all in 2008. All right, because they have come close a lot of times since they won that championship in '08. Okay, so stay with me here. All right, 2009. They lost versus the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference semifinals in 7 games. 2010, they lose against the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals in 7 games. 2011, they lose versus the Heat in the Eastern Conference semifinals in 5 games. They face the Heat again in 2012, this time in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they lose in 7 games. 2013, they lose versus the Knicks in the first round in 6 games. 2014, they missed the playoffs. 2015, they're back once again against LeBron. They lose versus the Cavs in the first round. It's a sweep. 2016, they lose versus the Hawks in the first round in 6. 2017, they lose versus the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals in 5 games. 2018, the very next year, they have to see LeBron again in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they lose in 7. Mind you, this is Jayson Tatum's rookie year. 2019, they lose versus the Bucks in the semifinals in 5. 2020, they lose versus the Heat in Eastern Conference Finals in 6 games. 2021, they lose versus the Nets in the first round in 5. 2022, obviously, they lose versus the Warriors in the finals in 6 games after having a 2-1 lead. And then last year, 2023, they lost versus the Heat in 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. So you can see a lot of patterns. There's some variety there, but you can see some patterns, right? Some patterns you might have heard, a lot of game sevens, right? A lot of matchups versus the Heat, right? Even if they were totally different Heat teams, right? It was the LeBron years, and then now it's like the Jimmy Butler years, right? But again, a lot of those runs were deep, right? Eastern Conference Finals, NBA Finals, those kind of uh matchups for them. So, like I said, it's some nice variety, but for a franchise that's so historic, known for winning, legendary franchise, awesome teams, awesome players in their history, look at how many times over this past decade and some change that they were so close to winning again, but fell short. The Celtics and their fans have been itching for some jewelry, rightfully so. And while I believe it's unfair criticism because he didn't start his career as the go-to guy, notice that since Jayson Tatum has been in the league, he has been at least to the conference finals in 4 of his 6 playoff appearances. You know what I'm saying? You know how many young guys would love to be drafted into a situation where they can make the conference finals 4 times in their first 6 seasons? And he still has no rings. Right. Again, I think that's why people hate on Jayson Tatum. Like I said, it's unfair criticism, right? It's not like one guy can do it, and he wasn't always the go-to guy. But again, it is something you think about, like, dang, he's had a lot of chances, and it just hasn't happened for him. So again, like I said, naturally people have hated on him for that. And I respect it though. I respect that Jayson, in his more like mellow, modest personality, he wants to use a finals win as his clapback. And like I said, for some reason all year I've been sensing it. Like I think he can do it. He hasn't made excuses. He isn't a loud guy. Like he wants to do it the right way. And I respect him for that. But it's tough to see that with so many chances, he just still hasn't gotten one yet. But again, that could very well change this year. He's not going to have the ball as much. Many people thought that was the issue versus the Golden State in 2022. He was forced to be a playmaker and didn't always have his best scoring showing. Like I said, again, to me, Drew Holiday, the same guy who won a chip with Milwaukee in 2021, is going to change that. Jaylen Brown has seemed to grow this year. It will be a big postseason for him as well. Kristaps Porzingis has a great opportunity himself. I just like how this team seems to have a chip on their shoulder. And even Joe Mazzulla, right? Having to come back from that embarrassing game 7 last season in Miami, or versus Miami rather. And, like I said, I don't think people liked how he seemed to choose offense over defense before the season. Although Drew Holiday is arguably the best defender in the league, and Kristaps Porzingis has shown he can be a capable last line of defense for that team. So for especially for a team that takes so much pride in it, right? A lot of people doubted Kristaps Porzingis earlier this year, and I think he's shown to play really good basketball for the Boston Celtics. So, like I said, I think the trends are going up. I don't know about you, but I think all the Boston Celtics, they're going in the right direction. You know, like I said, people hated on Tatum. People felt like Jaylen Brown should have went elsewhere. Like I said, people didn't like the Porzingis trade. Even felt like Joe Mazzulla, right? There was some conversation that Joe Mazzulla was going to be out as coach, right? So, uh, a lot of chip on the shoulder for this team. But it seems like everything has paid off so far. But now it's time for the real thing. You know what I'm saying? You can have a great regular season, but fold in the playoffs. So it's going to matter even more for the Boston Celtics this year. And I think, like I said, the maturity and embracing the pressure that comes with being a Boston Celtic has seemed to put this team in a fantastic position to do something special. And I think they are the team to beat. And dare I say it, they will run through the East like a Taco Bell meal. I think I really think they will. I really think they will, in all seriousness. I think even if Miami does their playoff thing, I think Boston's going to be ready this time. I think Embiid's injury hurt Philly's momentum. So possibly having to climb from the play-in is going to be tough on them. Indy and Orlando aren't scary enough. Good teams, but they're just not that scary. Milwaukee, Cleveland, even New York, I guess. They're nice, but not nice enough. Like, I think it's all Boston, man. I think it's all Boston. I just think it's theirs to lose. They just got it. As always, my thing with them is the 3-point shot. This team just can't fall in love with jump shots, especially the threes. That was one of their other mistakes versus the Warriors. I know they were first in the league, but if they're not falling, don't just keep shooting. Get something else. Get something at the rim. Get a stop. Get a transition bucket. Like, I think again, even the post game, right? Drew Holiday has underrated post up game. Porzingis has inside out game. Like Jayson Tatum can post up. Jaylen Brown can post up. Like, use that variety that you have. Use that to your advantage. Uh, uh, differentiate that attack offensively. I think that's been the critique with Boston over the years. Stop playing with your food, man. Finish your breakfast. Stop playing around, and keep your foot on the neck. And so, speaking of which, if I'm going to take a page out of what we do, what you've come to hear in our playoff previews, this is my challenge for the Boston Celtics. And I think it's obvious. The Boston Celtics have to win the NBA Finals. I challenge the Boston Celtics to win the NBA Finals this year. And their theme song for the playoffs is Many Men by 50 Cent. I need that gritty, serious energy from this team. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, many men, women, children, they're all wishing that the Celtics would lose again, right? People hate the Celtics just because they're the Celtics. Many men are wishing defeat on this team. And there's some pressure on the Celtics, right? Again, much like the pressure, you can just feel when 50 Cent is rapping that song. There's some pressure with the Celtics. Pressure simply because they're the Celtics, and pressure because where the Celtics have been the last several years, more particularly the previous 2 seasons. Like I said previously, it's unfair that Jayson Tatum gets flack for some of those early playoff runs. But I think they lost their series lead in the 2022 finals largely due to turnovers and settling for tough shots. Then they lose again against the Heat, right? Even after their comeback effort, it was like, oh, they might come back from 3-1 or 3-0 or whatever it was. And then they had an embarrassing game 7 at home. Like, those are 2 tough defeats the last couple seasons. And I think the main thing that the Celtics are going to have to look at this year, they're going to have to show that they're not messing around this year. And after losing in 2022 and losing the way they did last year, they need to show that this third time will indeed be the charm. And we'll see if they're up for it. All right. Whew. I had to give you some heat for the playoffs. Even without the big episode, I hope I was able to bring some anticipation for what's to come. And I should mention that I actually don't have a dog of the week this week. I know that's something I definitely like to do, when I do these episodes. But I didn't want to do a dog of the week simply because a lot of the teams, they kind of rest their starters at the time of me recording this episode, right? We're towards the end of the season. A lot of guys are resting. We're gearing up for the playoffs. So I want to wait till the actual playoffs get underway before I bring that segment back, because there ain't nothing more doggish than a playoff performance, right? Than a dominant playoff performance. So I want to I want to wait till we start seeing those and seeing who's really doggish this year where it matters the most. All right. So I think it'll be even more exciting as I save it for that. Like I said, the playoffs are a perfect time for that. So we'll be on the lookout, and I want you to be on the lookout as well to see who might get a nod in a future episode. But with all that said, we have made it to the end of another Hip to the Games episode. From the Pelicans possibly emerging as a sleeper contender out west to the intense trilogy between the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Celtics having a big playoff run ahead of them. Plenty of hot and intense topics within the NBA. But as always, at the end of the day, these were just my thoughts. So I would love to hear from you. You can tweet the show at Hip to the Games or tag me directly on Twitter or IG at Desmond Powell _ and share your thoughts on any of the topics discussed today, as I would love to hear or read your thoughts. And as always, I want to thank you for listening to another episode of H2DG. all for the love of the best combo there is. And of course, here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. All right, enjoy those playoffs. And be on the lookout for my guys, Devon and Johnny, coming back to do some kind of variation of our real playoff episode. Like I said, I really wanted I'm excited for you to experience that this year. I always try to make it bigger and better every year. So, I'm anxious to get that done and let y'all rock out with that. But for now, I hope that this will suffice and, that you enjoyed this episode thoroughly. But of course, that's it from me. Peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at Desmond Powell _ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.